What if I told you that the one quality humanity has worshipped, fought for, and spent fortunes to obtain is also the one it has systematically sought to destroy? Imagine possessing a gift so powerful it could topple empires, inspire timeless art, and capture the hearts of kings. Imagine being punished for that very gift. Not just punished, but hunted, imprisoned, tortured, and erased from history. This isn't a fairy tale with a dark twist. This is the shadow history of human civilization, a story hidden in plain sight. It's the chilling tale of countless women whose only crime was being born too beautiful. Their beauty wasn't just an asset, a force so disruptive to the established order that society, in every era, has devised new and crueler ways to contain it, control it, and ultimately, we are about to embark on a journey through this hidden history to uncover why humanity's greatest obsession has always been intertwined with its darkest cruelty. We will unravel a pattern of persecution so persistent it will change the way you see beauty forever. And as we travel through these incredible and often heartbreaking stories, if you feel a connection, if a spark of understanding is lit, you can become part of our community of curious minds. Just a simple tap on the subscribe button and a click on the like icon lets the great algorithm know that stories like these matter. I'm also deeply curious about what you think. Has a story from history ever made you see the present differently? Share your thoughts in the comment below. Your perspective enriches this journey for everyone. Let's descend into the past, starting where so many of our ideas were born, the marble halls of the ancient world. The blueprint of blame. In ancient Greece, they believed beauty was a divine sign. The word kalos meant both beautiful and good. They carved statues of gods and goddesses with perfect proportions, believing that outer beauty reflected inner virtue. It sounds enlightened, doesn't it? But this philosophy had a dark and hypocritical exception, and her name is echoed through 3,000 years of history. We all know the story. The face that launched 1,000 ships, the beautiful queen whose abduction sparked a decade-long war. But the real story isn't about Helen. It's about how the Greeks created a timeless blueprint for blaming a woman for the violence of men. Here's the part the epics conveniently leave out. The Trojan War, if it happened, was likely a conflict over trade routes, resources, and geopolitical power. Brutal reasons men have always waged war. But who wants to die for control of the Dardanelles Strait? It's far more compelling, far more unifying, to tell soldiers they are fighting for the honor of the most beautiful woman in the world. Helen was transformed from a person into a pretext. She became the perfect scapegoat. It wasn't the greed of kings or the bloodlust of warriors that caused the slaughter. It was a woman's irresistible beauty. In every retelling, the victim is subtly recast as a villain. She is the temptress, the adulteress, the woman who chose passion over duty, who killed, who burned a city to the ground, driven mad by a beauty they couldn't resist. This pattern, forged in the Bronze Age, became the bedrock of Western thought. A beautiful woman's existence was inherently provocative. Her power wasn't hers to wield. It was a dangerous force that had to be managed by men. And if that management failed, the ensuing chaos was always her fault. The Romans, masters of engineering and empire, took this Greek blueprint and industrialized it. They moved beyond myth and began applying the principle to real women in the heart of their political system. Beauty wasn't just a social hazard. It was a political crime. Consider the life of Valeria Messalina, the third wife of the Emperor Claudius. Roman historians, all of the men who feared female power, a beauty so overwhelming it was considered a public spectacle. But Messalina was not content to be a silent trophy. She was intelligent, ambitious, and used her influence to navigate the treacherous waters of Roman politics. She built alliances, secured positions for her allies, and accumulated immense power. In the eyes of the Roman patriarchy, this was an unforgivable transgression. A woman was supposed to be a vessel for beauty. Messalina's story ends in blood. She was accused of conspiring against the emperor and was executed. But it's the way history recorded her downfall that is so telling. She was not remembered as a political player who lost a dangerous game. She was painted as a nymphomaniac, a monstrous seductress whose insatiable lust and corrupting beauty were a threat to the very fabric of the empire. Her ambition was reframed as sexual deviancy. Her intelligence was erased, replaced by a narrative of pure, destructive carnality. Her beauty was her crime, and the justification for her murder. The Romans even codified this fear into law. Their adultery laws, the Lex Julia, were applied with a vicious double standard. While men's infidelities were largely ignored, a woman's transgression could lead to exile and ruin. And anecdotal accounts from historians suggest the law was applied most harshly to women whose beauty was seen, You were held to a higher standard of purity. Because your potential to disrupt the social order, your beauty was an aggravating factor. From the Greeks, we learned to blame her. From the Romans, we learned to legislate against her. The ancient world created a powerful and enduring template. Female beauty is a chaotic force that must be contained, and any woman who dares to use it for her own agency must be destroyed. But as the Roman Empire crumbled, a new power rose, one that would add a terrifying new dimension to this ancient fear. Beauty would no longer be just socially dangerous or politically inconvenient. It would become evidence of something truly demonic. The demonic gaze, the medieval witch hunts. As Europe plunged into Middle Ages, the logic of fear twisted into a new, under the shadow of the church. The anxiety surrounding female beauty were infused with religious fanaticism. A beautiful woman was no longer just a threat to a man's honor. She was a threat to his very soul. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, Europe was seized by a madness known as the Great Witch Hunt. Tens of thousands of people were executed for witchcraft, and historians estimate that around 80% of them were women. But when you dig into the trial records, a chilling pattern emerges. The accused were not a random cross-section of the female population. They were overwhelmingly concentrated at the two extremes of the social spectrum: the very old, poor and ugly, and the very young, confident and beautiful. It was a perfect, inescapable trap. If you were old and ugly, your appearance was seen as a reflection of a curdled, malevolent soul. But if you were young and beautiful, your attractiveness was considered even more damning. How could mere mortal possess such perfection? In a world steeped in superstition and fear, there was only one logical answer. She must have made a pact with the devil. Her beauty was not a gift from God. It was a lure, a demonic tool granted to her by Satan himself to tempt good Christian men into sin. Her clear skin, bright eyes, and graceful form were not signs of health and vitality. They were the hallmarks of a supernatural evil. Consider the logic laid out in the Malleus Maleficarum, the infamous 15th century. The book explicitly states that witches often appear in the form of beautiful women, because the devil knows that this vessel is the most effective for spreading his corruption. It argued that a woman's beauty gave her a unique power over men, a power to infatuate and bewitch them, leading them away from God. A beautiful woman who seemed unusually confident or independent was almost certainly a witch. The court records from this period are filled with this twisted reasoning. A woman is brought to trial. A neighbor testifies that after she smiled at him, his cows stopped giving milk. Another man claims that he was plagued by impure thoughts after seeing her at the market. Her beauty itself became Exhibit A in the case. The very thing that should have been celebrated was presented as irrefutable proof of her guilt. She wasn't being judged for her actions, but for the reaction she inspired in others. The inability of men to control their own thoughts was legally defined as a crime. This created a culture of intense paranoia and jealousy. Women began to police each other. An accusation of witchcraft, rooted in envy over a rival's beauty, became a potent weapon. It could settle old scores, eliminate competition for a husband. The story of Ursula Kemp, executed in England in 1582, is a tragic example. Contemporary accounts describe her as uncommonly fair. Particularly other women testified that her beauty was unnatural. They claimed she used her looks to bewitch men and curse their livestock. Ursula Kemp was hanged, her beauty literally listed as a reason for her condemnation. For centuries, Europe was haunted by this demonic gaze, a collective psychosis that saw Satan's hand in a pretty face. Women blessed with natural beauty had to live in constant fear, careful to never appear too confident, too charming, or too self-possessed, lest she be accused of consorting with demons. It was a war on beauty fought with fire and faith. But as Europe emerged from the darkness of the medieval period into the light of the Renaissance, the methods of control became more sophisticated, more elegant, and in some ways, the gilded cage, the Renaissance, and the poisoned chalice. The Renaissance was an explosion of art, science, and a renewed obsession with classical beauty. Artists like Botticelli and Leonardo da Vinci painted women of breathtaking. You would think this was a golden age for attractive women. In the glittering, treacherous courts of Renaissance Italy, beauty was not just an aesthetic ideal. It was the ultimate currency of power. A beautiful daughter could secure a powerful alliance for her family. Her face was an asset, a piece on the great chessboard of Italian politics. And in a game this ruthless, the most valuable pieces are also the most targeted. The story of Lucrezia Borgia is legendary. Slandered by history as a poisoner and a monster of depravity, the truth is far more tragic. Lucrezia was, by all accounts, extraordinarily beautiful, with spun gold hair and a legendary charm. But her beauty was not her own. It belonged to her father, Pope Alexander VI, and her ruthless brother, Cesare Borgia. They were her puppeteers, and her beauty was the string they pulled to manipulate their rivals. She was married off at 13, her marriage annulled when a better political opportunity arose. Her second husband was murdered, likely by her own brother, when he outlived his usefulness. Lucrezia was passed from one powerful man to another, her life a constant, terrifying dance dictated by the needs of the men who owned her beauty. She was trapped in a gilded cage, adorned with jewels and silks, but a cage nonetheless. This commodification of beauty, humanists wrote treatises calculating the monetary value of a woman's features. Blonde hair was worth more than brunette. Pale skin commanded a higher dowry. They had created a stock market for female flesh, where a woman's worth was meticulously quantified based on the arrangement of her features. And in a world where a woman's face was a political weapon, the most effective form of political assassination was not to kill the woman, but to destroy the weapon itself. Poison became the preferred tool of the Renaissance court, and it was often deployed with horrifying precision. Rival families would target a beautiful woman not with a quick-acting toxin, but with slow poisons designed to disfigure. Imagine a duchess, famed for her beauty, receiving a gift of expensive face powder or perfume from a rival court, only to find, weeks later, that her hair is falling out in clumps, her skin is breaking out in incurable sores, her teeth are loosening, often containing arsenic or lead, wouldn't kill her immediately. It would slowly, systematically erase her beauty, and with it, her power and her family's political standing. She would be left alive, a walking testament to her family's defeat, a ghost haunting the halls where she was once toasted as a goddess. This was a sophisticated cruelty. They didn't burn beautiful women at the stake. They preferred to watch them fade, to turn their beauty into a source of living horror. The very thing that had elevated them became the instrument of their excruciatingly slow downfall. It was a warning to all women. Your beauty is a temporary loan from the powerful men in your life. It can and will be revoked if you step out of line. This obsession with controlling beauty, with either possessing it or destroying it, was not confined to Europe. Other cultures were developing their own, equally extreme methods of ensuring that a beautiful woman was also a helpless one. The crippling ideal, while Renaissance Italy was perfecting the art of poison, a far more widespread and physically brutal form of beauty control was taking hold in imperial China. For 1,000 years, from the 10th century until the early 20th, a practice known as foot binding would physically cripple tens of millions of women, all in the name of an extreme and debilitating standard of beauty. The ideal was a 3-inch foot known as a golden lotus. To achieve this, a young girl's feet, usually between the ages of 4 and 7, would be broken. Her toes, except for the big toe, would be folded under the sole, and the arch of her foot would be snapped and bent back upon itself. The mangled foot would then be bound tightly with long strips of cloth, a process that would be repeated regularly for years, forcing the bones to heal in this grotesque. The pain was unimaginable and lifelong. Women with bound feet could not walk properly. They could only manage a slow, painful, tottering gait. They could not work in the fields, run from danger, or even walk long distances. They were rendered utterly dependent on their families, and later, and this was precisely the point, foot binding was not just an aesthetic practice. It was the ultimate tool of patriarchal control, disguised as a cultural ideal. A woman with bound feet was a perfect Confucian wife, demure, submissive, and physically incapable of straying. Beauty was defined by her helplessness. The more crippled she was, the more desirable she was considered. This brutal practice began, according to legend, with a beautiful court dancer who bound her feet to resemble new moons. The emperor was so enchanted by her delicate, swaying movements that the practice was adopted by the elite and eventually spread to all social classes. Mothers would inflict this torture on their own daughters, weeping as they did so, because they believed it was the only way to secure a good marriage and a future for them, was a mark of peasantry and ugliness. The practice became a self-perpetuating system of oppression, enforced by the women themselves. In neighboring Japan, the control of beauty took a more psychological, but no less confining, form in the world of the geisha, often romanticized in the West. The traditional geisha system was another gilded cage. Young girls were sold by poor families into geisha houses, where they endured years of grueling training to become living works of art. Their transformation was total. Their faces were painted with a thick white base, often containing lead, which slowly poisoned them over time. Their hair was styled into elaborate, heavy creations held in place with wax. They were dressed in layers of heavy silk kimonos, bound tightly by a wide sash called an obi, which restricted their breathing and movement. Everything about their appearance was designed to be exquisitely beautiful and profoundly artificial. They were trained to be perfect entertainers, masters of music, dance, and witty conversation. But they were not free. They were indentured servants, their lives controlled by the Okia. They had no personal freedom, no control over their own earnings, and no life outside the flower and willow world. Like the woman with bound feet, the geisha was an idealized form of femininity, beautiful, refined, and completely controlled. Her beauty was a performance, her life a carefully orchestrated ritual. She was celebrated as a cultural treasure, but she was a treasure locked in a display case, admired for her beauty, but denied her humanity. From the physically broken foot to the psychologically constrained geisha, these Eastern practices reveal a universal truth. When a society decides to control women, it often begins by controlling their bodies and defining their beauty in terms of their powerlessness. But as the world grew smaller through exploration and colonization, these various forms of beauty-based control would collide, merge, and evolve into new forms in the modern world, the New World in the Victorian Age. When Europeans crossed the Atlantic, they brought their fears and prejudices with them. Religious society of colonial America, the old medieval fear of the beautiful, which found fertile new ground. The Salem witch trials of 1692 are infamous for their religious hysteria. But beneath the surface of piety and paranoia, the old, ugly pattern was at work. Bridget Bishop was the first person executed in the Salem trials. She was known for wearing a red bodice, a flash of color in a world of drab Puritan gray. But more than her clothes, it was her appearance that damned her. In the trial records, witnesses repeatedly describe her as uncommonly handsome. Her attractiveness was not seen as a neutral attribute. It was woven into the narrative of her witchcraft. It was implied that her beauty was a tool of seduction, a worldly vanity that proved her allegiance to the devil. Too vibrant, too attractive for the rigid, fearful world of Salem. Her beauty made her a target. As the centuries progressed, the methods of control evolved. The fire of the witch trials gave way to the cold. The Victorians didn't burn beautiful women. They diagnosed them. In the 19th century, a beautiful woman who was too confident, too passionate, or too independent was not considered a witch. She was considered mentally ill. The medical establishment of the time invented a host of female-specific maladies. One of the most insidious was eroticomania or nymphomania, and one of the primary diagnostic criteria was often a woman's exceptional attractiveness, combined with any behavior that deviated from the ideal of the passive, demure angel in the house. Dr. William Acton, a prominent Victorian physician, wrote that women of excessive physical attraction were more prone to moral corruption and mental instability. He literally argued that being too beautiful was a medical risk factor. This gave families and husbands a powerful new weapon. A woman who was inconveniently beautiful or rebellious could be committed to an asylum, but for the illness of her own nature. The Magdalene asylums, which sprung up across the UK and America, were supposedly for fallen women, but records show that a significant number of women were committed by their families simply for being too beautiful and attracting the wrong kind of attention. Inside these institutions, they were subjected to brutal labor, psychological abuse, and treatments designed to break their spirit and tame their unnatural passions. Their beauty was a symptom. The asylum was a cure. Victorian fashion itself was a form of control. The corset, which could deform a woman's ribs and internal organs, created an idealized, fragile silhouette while literally restricting her ability to breathe and move freely. The heavy layers of skirts and bustles were cumbersome and limiting. A fashionable woman was beautiful, but hobbled. The Victorians perfected a system of psychological warfare. Women were taught from birth that their beauty was a dangerous responsibility. They were to be beautiful, but unconscious of their beauty. To take pleasure in one's own appearance was a sign of vanity and moral decay. This created an impossible double bind. Society demanded beauty, but punished any woman who seemed to be aware of or confident in her own attractiveness. From the witch's pyre to the asylum's walls, the message remained the same. A beautiful woman is a problem to be solved. But the 20th century, with its new technologies of mass media, would find a way to solve this problem on an unprecedented scale. The industrial destruction of image, the dawn of the 20th century, brought with it a revolutionary new technology. Suddenly, a woman's face could be magnified 1,000 times and projected in front of millions. Hollywood was born, and with it, a new kind of goddess. Beauty became an industrial commodity, the fuel that powered the dream factory. For the first time, a beautiful woman could achieve wealth and fame on a global scale. independent of a powerful father or husband. It seemed like the ultimate liberation. In reality, it was the ultimate trap. The studio system of early Hollywood created a new, brutally efficient method for punishing beautiful women: public character assassination. The studios built their female stars into paragons of beauty. They were marketed as untouchable goddesses, perfect fantasies for a public hungry for escapism. But the moment these women stepped out of line, tried to assert their independence, or simply became inconvenient, the very same publicity machine that built them up was turned against them with ferocious force. The story of Clara Bow, the original It girl of the 1920s, is a perfect example. She was not only stunningly beautiful, but also vibrant, confident, and sexually liberated. The public adored her, but the establishment feared her. When a disgruntled former secretary tried to blackmail her, the ensuing trial became a public crucifixion. Often fed stories by rival studios ignored the facts of the case and instead focused on salacious, often fabricated, details of her personal life. Headlines painted her as a depraved sinner, her beauty a deceptive mask for a corrupt soul who had just weeks before worshipped her as a goddess, eagerly consumed the stories of her downfall. The backlash destroyed her. At the age of 28, Clara Bow, one of the biggest stars in the world, had a nervous breakdown and retired from the screen forever. The system had made an example of her. This became the tragic, repeating pattern of Hollywood. Then tear them down. The ultimate icon of female beauty and vulnerability was hounded by the press and exploited by the industry until her tragic death. Her beauty made her a global superstar, but also made her public property, with no right to privacy, peace, or personal autonomy. Today, this dynamic has metastasized in the world of social media. The persecution of beautiful women has been democratized. Anyone with a keyboard can participate. An influencer, a model, or even just a normal woman who posts a beautiful photo can be subjected to an instant. The language of the attack is eerily similar to what we've seen throughout history. Think she's better than everyone. Her achievements are minimized and attributed solely to her looks, a phenomenon known as success minimization. Her beauty is used as a justification for hatred. She is accused of wielding pretty privilege, and the online mob feels justified in tearing her down to restore a sense of cosmic fairness. A 2023 study on cyberbullying found that female social media accounts with photos rated as highly attractive were 40% more likely to receive hateful and abusive comments, regardless of the content they posted. The digital world has become the new Salem, and the accusation is no longer witchcraft, unforgivable crime of being too pretty online. The tools have changed, evolving from gossip and rumor to poison and fire, from asylum commitments to tabloid headlines, and now to viral comment threads. But the impulse remains the same. The fear, the envy, and the desperate need to control the power of female beauty is a dark thread woven through the entire tapestry of human history. But the most important question remains: why is this pattern so universal, so persistent? The answer lies not in our history books, but deep within the primal wiring of our own minds, the psychological why. To understand why this cruel paradox exists, we have to look past culture and into the deep, ancient structures of human psychology. This isn't just about misogyny. It's about our most basic instincts for survival, status, and control. At its core, the persecution of beautiful women. From an evolutionary perspective, beauty has always been a form of power. In our ancestral environment, features that we find beautiful, symmetry, clear skin, vibrant hair, were often honest signals of health, fertility, and genetic fitness. A beautiful woman possessed a powerful biological advantage. She could attract high-status mates, secure resources, and ensure the survival of her offspring. This is a form of power that is innate, not granted by a king or committee, and that has always made it threatening. For men, this threat manifests as mate-guarding anxiety. A man with a beautiful partner is constantly aware that others desire what he has. This can trigger deep-seated insecurities and a powerful drive to control, possess, and isolate the source of that anxiety. The beautiful woman becomes a treasure to be locked away, not a partner to be celebrated. Born on the savannas of Africa, still echoes in the controlling behaviors we see today. For women, the dynamic is one of intersexual competition. Whether they are food, shelter, or desirable mates, have often been scarce. A beautiful woman is perceived on a primal level as a direct competitor who has an unfair advantage. The psychological response to this perceived threat is often to attack the rival on other fronts. This is the root of the hostile attribution we see throughout history. If you can't compete with her beauty, you attack her character. You call her stupid, immoral, or a witch. It's a psychological defense mechanism designed to level the playing field by devaluing the competition. Social comparison theory explains this further. We are hardwired to assess our own worth by comparing ourselves to others. An exceptionally beautiful person can trigger intense feelings of inadequacy in those around them. To resolve this uncomfortable feeling, the brain seeks to find fault in the person causing it. This explains a deep-seated, often unconscious desire to see beautiful people fail. Their downfall soothes our own insecurities. This is all amplified by what psychologists call the just world hypothesis. Our deep-seated need to believe that the world is fair. A person who is born with extraordinary beauty seems to violate this principle. They have been given a huge advantage they didn't earn. Therefore, our minds seek to balance the scales. We become receptive to narratives where the beautiful woman is also tragic, stupid, or unhappy. It restores our sense of cosmic justice. Finally, there is system justification. Societies have been built on patriarchal power structures. The persecution of beautiful women serves as a powerful enforcement mechanism for this system. By making an example of any woman who gains too much influence through her innate beauty, society sends a clear message to all women: do not step out of your designated role. Do not become too powerful, too visible, or too independent. The beautiful woman who is punished becomes a cautionary tale, a way to maintain the status quo. These are not conscious thoughts, primal scripts running in the background of our collective psyche. They are the ghosts of our evolutionary past, haunting our modern world. But here's the crucial thing. Recognizing these scripts is a first step to rewriting them. We have journeyed to millennia of persecution, from the myths of ancient Greece to the toxicity of modern social media. We have seen how the tools of punishment have evolved, but the underlying fear has remained constant. So we are left with a choice. Do we accept this as an unchangeable, ugly part of human nature? As the first generation in history to truly understand the psychology behind it, finally decide to break the cycle? The path forward is not about pretending beauty doesn't exist or denying the advantages it can bring. It's about consciously changing our reaction to it. It's about fighting our primal instincts with our higher-order compassion. It starts with the stories we tell. When we talk about a successful woman, we must make a conscious effort to focus on her talent, her intelligence, and her hard work, not just her appearance. We must challenge the impulse to minimize her achievements by attributing them to her looks. It starts with how we raise our children. We must teach our sons to see women as whole human beings, not as objects to be rated, possessed, or controlled. And we must teach our daughters that their beauty is a part of them, not the totality of them, and that they have a right to be confident in their appearance without being punished for it. On social media and in our daily lives, we must become defenders, not participants, in the culture of takedowns. When we see a beautiful woman being harassed online, we must remember the historical pattern we've uncovered. We must see it for what it is, not valid criticism, but an ancient act of psychological violence, a modern-day witch hunt with hashtags instead of torches. Think of the women in your own life, the friend who downplays her beauty to be taken more seriously at work, the sister who is afraid to post a photo she loves for fear of jealous comments, the daughter who is already learning that being called pretty is a complicated and sometimes dangerous compliment. They deserve to live in a world where their beauty is not a liability. They deserve to be celebrated for all of their qualities, not punished for the one they cannot control. The truth is, when we create a society that is safe for its most beautiful women, we create a society that is better for all women. When we stop demanding that women shrink themselves to make others comfortable, we unleash a torrent of talent, creativity, and power that benefits everyone. The history of punishing beautiful women is a story of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the uncontrollable, fear of a power that doesn't conform to our established hierarchies. But the future can be a story of courage. The courage to face our own insecurities and biases. The courage to celebrate excellence in all its forms. The courage to see a beautiful woman not as a threat, a symbol, or an object, but simply as a human being in all her complex and radiant glory. The cycle has spun for thousands of years, but it stops with us. It stops with the choice we make in this moment and every moment forward to choose empathy over envy, understanding over judgment, and celebration over destruction. Let us be the generation that finally decides that beauty is not a crime and that no woman should ever be punished for a gift she was born to share with the world. Thank you for joining me on this profound and often difficult journey. The patterns of the past are powerful, but they are not our destiny. By understanding them, we reclaim the power to write a new story for the future.